The emergency room at Memorial General Hospital buzzed with its usual Friday night chaos. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a quiet radiologist who preferred the dim glow of imaging screens to the bright lights of trauma base, was making her way through the corridor when the automatic doors exploded open. Paramedics rushed in, wheeling a stretcher, bearing a firefighter still in his scorched turnout gear. His breathing was labored, his face covered in soot and ash. The acrid smell of smoke filled the sterile air. Inhalation, injury, possible carbon monoxide poisoning. Second-degree burns on both arms. The lead paramedic shouted. He's been fighting the warehouse fire downtown for 6 hours straight. The trauma team descended like hawks. Dr. Reynolds, the chief resident known for his aggressive treatment style, immediately started barking orders. Get him intubated now. Push the steroids. Someone get toxicology down here! But the firefighter's eyes snapped, open, wild, disoriented. His massive hand shot out and grabbed Dr. Reynolds by the collar. The building, he gasped. There are still people inside. I have to go back. Security rushed forward. Nurses stepped back nervously. The firefighter wasn't seeing the hospital anymore. He was seeing flames, hearing screams, feeling the weight of lives on his shoulders. Sir, you need to calm down, Dr. Reynolds said firmly, trying to pry the man's fingers loose. You're in a hospital. You're safe. I'm not safe until they're safe. The firefighter roared, thrashing against the restraints being fastened around his wrists. That's when Sarah stepped forward. Everyone turned to look at her with surprise. The quiet Dr. Mitchell, who rarely spoke up in meetings, who ate lunch alone in her office, who had been at Memorial for 3 years without making a single wave, was walking straight into the eye of the storm. Don't restrain him, she said softly, but clearly. Dr. Reynolds shot her an incredulous look. Dr. Michi, with all due respect, this is a trauma situation. We need to secure the patient before... Before what? Sarah interrupted, her voice still quiet but carrying an unexpected authority. Before you trigger a full PTSD episode. Before his blood pressure spikes so high he strokes out. Before you do exactly what his brain is telling him to expect in a crisis that... He's trapped and under attack. She moved closer to the bed, ignoring the warnings from security. The firefighter's wild eyes locked onto her. Sarah did something nobody expected. She placed her hand gently on his soot-covered forearm and spoke 3 words that changed everything. Mission complete. Captain. The firefighter froze. His breathing, which had been coming in panicked gasps, suddenly steadied. His grip on Dr. Reynolds loosened. What? What did you just say? He whispered. Sarah's eyes, usually so calm and distant, now burned with recognition. I said mission complete. Captain Daniels, your team evacuated everyone. All civilians accounted for. All firefighters accounted for. You can stand down now. Tears cut clean tracks through the soot on his face. Dr. Chun, is that really you? The entire emergency room went silent. Even the machines seemed to hold their breath. Dr. Reynolds looked between them, confused. Dr. Mitchell, how do you... Her name isn't Mitchell, Captain Daniels said, his voice cracking with emotion. At least, it was on when she pulled me and 4 other Marines out of a burning building in Fallujah, while insurgents fired at the rescue point. She wasn't a radiologist then. She was Air Force Combat Rescue, call sign Phoenix, and she's the reason any of us made it home. The whispers started immediately. Residents exchanged glances. Nurses who had worked alongside Sarah for years suddenly realized they knew nothing about her. Dr. Reynolds stood frozen, his medical authority suddenly meaningless in the face of a history he couldn't begin to comprehend. Serore Dr. Chun, as she apparently once was, kept her hand on Captain Daniel's arm, grounding him, keeping him present. That was a long time ago, she said quietly. You need oxygen therapy, fluid replacement, and observation for at least 12 hours. Will you let them help you? Daniels nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. Only if you're the one overseeing it. Dr. Reynolds found his voice again. Dr. Mitchell isn't certified for trauma medicine. She's a diagnostic radiologist. She's also a certified flight surgeon, tactical combat casualty care instructor, and has more field trauma hours than everyone in this room combined. Daniels countered. His voice was weak, but certain. I looked you up after I got home, Doc. I know you left the service. I know why. His voice dropped to a whisper. I know about Lieutenant Reeves. Sarah's face went pale. Around them, the emergency room staff watched in stunned silence as their quiet, unremarkable colleague became someone entirely different before their eyes. That's not a conversation for here, Sarah said firmly. Though her voice wavered slightly, a young intern, Dr. Patel, who had been shadowing Sarah in radiology, stepped forward hesitantly. Dr. Mitchell, is this true? Were you really in combat? Rescue? Sarah turned to face the growing crowd of medical staff. For 3 years, she had kept her head down, avoided attention, stayed in the shadows of the imaging department. She had built a wall between who she was and who she had been. Now that wall was crumbling. Yes, she said simply. I served 8 years as a Pereskumanapije with the Air Force Special Operations. I did 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. I left the service with the rank of technical sergeant and a medical degree earned through a military scholarship program. Dr. Reynolds shook his head in disbelief. Why wouldn't you tell anyone? Why hide that kind of experience? You could have been in trauma, in surgery, anywhere, but stuck in a dark room reading scans. Because reading scans doesn't require me to make life or death decisions with incomplete information while people are dying in front of me, Sarah replied, her voice sharp for the first time. Because I came here to heal quietly, not to be reminded every day of the people I couldn't save. Captain Daniels struggled to sit up, and Sarah instinctively moved to support him, adjusting his oxygen mask with practiced efficiency. The people you couldn't save, Daniels repeated, his eyes fierce despite his weakened state. Doc, you saved 17 service members on my rescue alone. 17. Do you know how many of us have kids now? How many graduations, weddings, birthdays happened because you ran into fire when everyone else ran out? Sarah's jaw tightened. And do you know how many didn't make it? How many times I had to zip body bags because I wasn't fast enough, wasn't skilled enough, wasn't human enough? Daniels interrupted gently. Doc, you were one person who did the impossible over and over. The fact that you couldn't save everyone doesn't erase the ones you did save. The emergency room was so quiet that the hum of the ventilation system seemed loud. Nurses wiped their eyes. Even Dr. Reynolds looked chastened. Then the doors burst open again. This time, it wasn't paramedics. It was a woman in a business suit, carrying a briefcase and wearing an expression of cool professionalism. Dr. Sarah Chun, formerly Technical Sergeant Chun, USAF, the woman asked, though it was clear she already knew the answer. Sarah straightened, her entire demeanor shifting. That's me. And you are Deputy Director Monica Walsh, Defense Intelligence Agency. She pulled out credentials. I need to speak with you privately. It's regarding Operation Sandstorm. The color drained from Sarah's face. Captain Daniels' eyes widened. That mission is classified above my clearance, he said. What could you possibly need from a retired PJ? Director Walsh's expression remained neutral. That's between me and Dr. Chun. Captain, I'm glad you're receiving care. Your service is appreciated. She turned back to Sarah. Shall we speak in private, or would you prefer to have this conversation here? Sarah glanced around at her colleagues, at the emergency room staff who now looked at her with a mixture of awe, confusion, and curiosity. She thought about the quiet life she'd built, the walls she'd erected, the past she'd tried so desperately to leave behind. Then she looked at Captain Daniels, who was watching her with gratitude and respect, the kind of look that said she had made a difference, that her sacrifices meant something. We can speak in the consultation room, Sarah said finally, but I'm not reactivating. I left that life, and I'm not going back. Director Walsh smiled slightly. I'm not here to reactivate you, Dr. Chun. I'm here because we need your help identifying something you saw during Operation Sandstorm. Something that's become relevant again. As Sarah followed the director down the hallway, she heard Captain Daniels call out behind her. Hey, Phoenix. She turned. Thank you, he said simply. For tonight, for everything. Sarah nodded, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt the weight on her shoulders lighten just a fraction. The consultation room was small and sterile, with a single window overlooking the parking lot. Director Walsh closed the door firmly and activated a small device that she placed on the Tabola signal jammer. Sarah realized, "This conversation is classified." Walsh began without preamble. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room." Sarah crossed her arms. "I signed non-disclosure agreements that will outlive us both. I know how this works." Walsh opened a briefcase and pulled out a photograph. It showed a man, middle-aged, with sharp features and cold eyes. "Do you recognize this individual?" Sarah's breath caught. She did recognize him. The image was burned into her memory along with fire, smoke, and the sound of screaming. "That's Dr. Karim Hassan," she said quietly. "He was the civilian contractor we evacuated during Operation Sandstorm. He claimed to be a humanitarian aid worker caught in the crossfire." "He wasn't," Walsh said flatly. "Dr. Hassan was a weapons engineer selling chemical weapons technology to insurgent groups. We didn't know that at the time. By the time we figured it out, he had disappeared." Sarah felt sick. "We risked everything to save that man." "Lieutenant Reeves died, covering the evacuation. You're telling me we saved a terrorist?" "You saved who you were ordered to save based on the intelligence available," Walsh corrected. "The failure was ours, not yours. But here's why I'm here now." She pulled out another photograph, this one recent, showing the same man boarding a plane. "Dr. Hassan resurfaced 2 weeks ago. We've been tracking him, and we believe he's planning to deploy a chemical weapon in a major U.S. city within the next 72 hours. Sarah's military instincts kicked in automatically. "What's the target?" "We don't know. That's the problem. Hassan is using a communication method he developed during his time in Iraq, a method you observed firsthand during the evacuation. You were the closest to him during transport. You heard him making calls, saw his behavior patterns. We need you to review the mission recordings and help us decode his current communications." "I gave my full debrief years ago," Sarah protested. "Everything I knew went into the report." "Reports miss things that memory catches," Walsh countered. "Small details that seemed irrelevant at the time. A phrase he used, a gesture. Anything that might help us understand his current plans." Sarah stood and walked to the window, staring out at the normal world beyond people going home after work. Ambulances arriving with everyday emergencies. Life continuing in blissful ignorance of the threats lurking in the shadows. "If I help you," Sarah said slowly, "if I go back into those memories, will it make a difference? Will it actually stop him? Or is this another mission where I am asked to trust the system that got Lieutenant Reeves killed?" Walsh was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost its professional edge and gained something almost human. "I can't promise you'll stop him. I can't promise the intelligence will be perfect this time. But I can tell you that if Hassan succeeds, hundreds of people will die. Possibly thousands. And I can tell you that you're the only person alive who spent 3 hours in close proximity with him during a crisis situation. If anyone can find the pattern in his behavior, it's you." Sarah closed her eyes, and in the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw Lieutenant Reeves zoom, brave, idealistic, pushing her behind cover and taking the bullets meant for her. She heard his last words. "Get him out." "Phoenix!" "That's the mission. Get him out. Save lives." That had always been the mission. "I'll need access to the full operation files," Sarah said, turning back to Walsh. "Not the redacted versions. Everything." "Already arranged," Walsh replied, pulling out a tablet. "You'll work from a secure facility. We have 72 hours maximum, possibly less." "I have patience," Sarah began, but Walsh cut her off. "Dr. Reynolds has already been briefed on your temporary absence. The hospital administration is cooperating fully. Your country needs you, Dr. Chun." Sarah laughed bitterly. "The last time my country needed me, I came home with scars and nightmares. What makes you think this time will be different? Because this time, you're not in the field," Walsh said. "You're not the one being shot at. You're using your mind, your memory, your expertise. And because this time, when it's over, you can go back to your quiet life, knowing you chose to help rather than being ordered to." That struck something deep. For 3 years, Sarah had hidden from her past, treating it like a wound that needed to be left alone to heal. But wounds left untreated don't heal, they fester. When do we start? Sarah, ask it. The secure facility was located in an unmarked building 20 miles from the hospital. Sarah was escorted through multiple security checkpoints, each more stringent than the last, until she found herself in a windowless conference room filled with monitors, computers, and intelligence analysts. Director Walsh introduced her to the team. Agent Marcus Reed from the FBI, Dr. Jennifer Torres from the CDC, and Commander James Wright from Naval Intelligence. They all looked at Sarah with a mixture of professional courtesy and barely concealed skepticism. "This is Dr. Sarah Chun," Walsh announced, former Air Force parachuteman, combat veteran with multiple theater deployments, and the only person who had extended direct contact with Dr. Hassan during Operation Sandstorm. Commander Wright leaned back in his chair. "With all due respect, Director, we have behavioral analysts, linguistic experts, and intelligence specialists already working this case. What can a radiologist add to the investigation?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I can add the human element that your computers can't quantify. I can tell you that Dr. Hassan touched his left ear 3 times during the evacuation flight whenever he was lying. I can tell you that he used his daughter's name as a verbal tick when he was stressed, which means family is likely a pressure point or a motivation. I can tell you that he switched between 3 languages, depending on his emotional state: English for control, Arabic for anger, and French for fear. Your algorithms won't catch that nuance because they weren't there. I was." The room fell silent. Commander Wright nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Let's see what you've got." For the next 6 hours, Sarah immersed herself in the mission recordings. She listened to audio files she hadn't heard in years, watched video footage that brought back the smell of aviation fuel and blood, reviewed transcripts that made her hands shake with remembered adrenaline. And slowly, patterns emerged. "Here," she said suddenly, freezing a frame of video. "See how Hassan looks to his right before answering any question about his work. He's not just thinking he's checking coordinates. He was using a spatial memory system, associating information with physical locations." Dr. Torres leaned forward. "That's a known technique for remembering large amounts of data without written notes. If he's still using that system, then we can predict his behavior based on geographical markers." Agent Reed finished. "He'll position himself in locations that match his memory palace structure." Walsh pulled up a map of potential targets. "We have 3 high-probability locations: a stadium, a subway system, and a convention center, all hosting major events this weekend." Sarah studied the map, then closed her eyes, putting herself back in that helicopter, listening to Hassan's voice, watching his movements. "The subway system," she said with certainty. "He kept mentioning underground networks during transport. I thought he meant insurgent cells, but he might have been literally talking about underground structures. And he had claustrophobia. I remember he panicked briefly when we hit turbulence, and the cabin pressure changed. He hated confined spaces, which means if he's choosing to work underground, it's because the target is worth overcoming his fear." Commander Wright was already on his phone, coordinating with local law enforcement. "We're deploying teams to all major subway stations. How much time do we have?" "Look at his call patterns during the mission," Sarah said, pulling up another file. "He made contact with his handlers every 4 hours like clockwork. Compulsive precision. If he has to maintaining that pattern," she checked her watch, "his next check-in is in 90 minutes. That's when he'll either abort or execute." Walsh stewed. "Then we have 90 minutes to find him. Dr. Chun, is there anything else? Any detail, no matter how small?" Sarah closed her eyes again, sinking back into memory. She heard the rhythmic thump of helicopter blades, felt the vibration through her boots, smelled the mix of antiseptic from her med kit, and smoke from Hassan's clothes. She heard his voice, speaking in rapid French to someone on a sad phone. Her eyes snapped open. He said something in French. I didn't think about it at the time because I was focused on treating Lieutenant Reeves. But he said beneath the old Iron Lady. I thought he was talking about the Eiffel Tower. But what if? Dr. Torres gasped. The Ironworkers Union Station. It's the oldest subway stop in the city. Built in 1904. They called it the Iron Lady because of its distinctive steel framework. That's our target, Walsh said decisively. She grabbed her phone. All units converge on Ironworkers Station. This is not a drill. Sarah insisted on going with the tactical team. Walsh tried to refuse, But Sarah's argument was simple and irrefutable. If Hassan sees anyone in tactical gear, he might trigger the device immediately. But if he sees the medic who saved his life 5 years ago, he might hesitate. That hesitation could save lives. She found herself in body armor for the first time in 3 years, standing in a command vehicle 2 blocks from Ironworkers Station. The tactical team, led by Commander Wright, moved into position with practiced precision. "We have visual confirmation." Wright's voice came through the radio. Male subject, matching Hassan's description near the north entrance, carrying a backpack. Thermal imaging shows electronic components consistent with a triggering device. Sarah's heart pounded. "I'm going in." "Negative," Walsh said firmly. "You're a consultant, not an operator." "I'm the only one he knows," Sarah countered. "I'm the only one he might listen to." She pulled off the radio earpiece before Walsh could argue further and walked toward the station entrance. The evening rush hour crowd flowed around her people heading home, teenagers laughing, an elderly couple holding hands. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that death waited in a backpack 30 feet below them. Sarah descended the stairs, her training automatically cataloging exits, cover positions, potential hostiles. And there he was, Dr. Karim. Hassan. Older, now, grayer, but unmistakably the man she'd pulled from a burning building while bullets cracked overhead. She walked straight toward him. Hassan looked up, and for a moment, confusion crossed his face. Then recognition hit, and his hand moved toward his backpack. "Hello, Dr. Hassan," Sarah said calmly, stopping 10 feet away. "Or should I call you by your real name?" His hand froze. "Sergeant Chun," he sighed softly, "the phoenix who rose from the ashes. It told me you had left the service." "I did. Now I save lives in a different way." She gestured around them. "These people are innocent. Whatever you're planning, they don't deserve to pay for it." Hassan's laugh was bitter. "Innocent? There is no innocence in war. You know that better than anyone. You saved me that day. Yes. But how many did you kill in other operations? How many villages did your military destroy?" "Too many," Sarah admitted, and the honesty in her voice made him pause. "I have nightmares about the ones I couldn't save, about the choices I made, about the man I watched die so you could live." Her voice cracked. Lieutenant Reeves was 24 years old. He had a fiancée waiting for him at home. He died covering your evacuation, and you're repaying that sacrifice by planning to kill hundreds of people who had nothing to do with what happened to you. "They are part of the system," Hassan insisted, but his conviction wavered. "They're people," Sarah countered, "like your daughter. I remember you talking about her during the flight. Amira, right? You said she wanted to be a doctor. What would she think if she knew you died killing innocent people? Would she be proud? Or would she be ashamed?" Hassan's eyes glistened. "My daughter is dead. American bombs killed her 3 years ago. Don't speak her name." Sarah felt the words like a physical blow. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She took a careful step closer. "But killing more people won't bring her back. It will just create more fathers and mothers who lose their children, more daughters who lose their fathers. The cycle never ends unless someone chooses to stop it." "I've already made my choice," Hassan said, but his hand hadn't moved toward the trigger. "Then why are you hesitating?" Sarah asked gently. "You could have triggered it the moment you saw me, but you didn't. Some part of you still remembers that day. Some part of you still remembers that even in war, even in hatred, someone chose to save your life. Let me save you again. Let me save all these people. Let me break the cycle." The platform was emptying as tactical teams quietly evacuated civilians under the guise of a maintenance emergency. Soon it was just Sarah, Hassan, and the weight of impossible choices. Hassan slowly removed his hand from the backpack and raised both hands. "I don't want forgiveness," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I just wanted to stop hurting." "I know," Sarah whispered. "I know." Tactical teams moved in swiftly, securing Hassan and carefully removing the backpack. Bomb disposal experts in heavy suits appeared from nowhere, their movements calm and methodical. Sarah stood still, watching as the man she'd saved 5 years ago was led away in handcuffs. Director Walsh approached, her expression unreadable. "That was incredibly reckless," Walsh said. "Yes," Sarah agreed. It was also incredibly brave. You've saved hundreds of lives today. Sarah shook her head. I didn't save them. We all did. Reed found the pattern. Torres identified the location. Wright's team secured the site. I just remembered. That's all. Walsh smiled slightly. Sometimes remembering is the most important thing we can do. 3 days later, Sarah returned to Memorial General Hospital. She walked through the emergency room, past nurses who now greeted her by name, past residents who nodded respectfully, past Dr. Reynolds who stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. Dr. Chun, he said formally, I owe you an apology. A serious one. I assumed because you were quiet, because you stayed in the background, that you had nothing important to contribute. I was wrong. Sarah smiled slightly. You weren't entirely wrong. I did choose the background. I chose to hide, but maybe it's time to stop hiding. She made her way to Captain Daniel's room. He was sitting up, looking much better, his burns bandaged and his breathing clear. Phoenix, he greeted her with a grin. Heard you saved the city, making the rest of us look bad. I heard you went back into a burning building to save 3 people after you were supposed to be off duty, Sarah countered. So we're even... They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Are you going back? Daniels asked. To the service? Sarah shook her head. No. That part of my life is over, but I'm also done hiding from it. Director Walsh offered me a consulting position helping train combat medics, reviewing tactical medical protocols, that sort of thing. I can do it remotely, keep my job here, but still use what I learned. Sounds perfect for you, Daniel said, using both halves of yourself instead of trying to choose one. Yeah, Sarah agreed. Both halves. She stood to leave, then paused. Hey, Captain! Thank you for reminding me who I was. I needed that. Thank you for reminding me why we fight, he replied. Not for the battles we win, but for the lives we save. Sarah walked out of the room and through the hospital, no longer invisible, no longer hiding, but not seeking the spotlight either. She was simply herself, Doctor Sarah Chun, radiologist, veteran, survivor, hero. In the imaging department, Dr. Patel was waiting with a stack of scans. Dr. Chun, I have some interesting cases to review with you. But first, could I ask you something? Sure, Sarah said. How do you do it? How do you carry everything you've seen and still show up every day and care about a fractured wrist or a suspicious nodule? Sarah thought for a moment, because every fractured wrist is connected to a hand that holds a child. Every suspicious nodule is in a body that wants to see one more sunrise. Every scan we read, every diagnosis we make, every life we touch it. All matters. The scale doesn't matter. Saving one person or saving hundreds. It is all the same mission. Leaving the world a little less broken than we found it. Dr. Patel nodded slowly, understanding dawning in their eyes. Sarah turned on the monitors and pulled up the first case. Outside the window, the city continued its evening rhythm lights, coming on in windows, cars streaming home, life flowing forward. And in that quiet room, surrounded by images of the human body in all its fragility and resilience, Dr. Sarah Chun Phoenix, guardian, healer, did what she did best. She saved lives, one scan at a time.